Hi everyone, Jeff Toyster here. I'm here today with Kyle Hamm, Vice President of Customer Transformation at Schneider Electric. And today we're going to talk about rituals. I got to know Kyle about a month or so ago at the CX Day in Nashville, and he shared some very interesting, very helpful information on how rituals can reinforce your service culture. So I'm excited to talk to you today. Kyle, how are you?
I'm terrific. Thanks for having me, Jeff. Looking forward to the discussion.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun, and at least it's for me. I hope for you too.
All right.
I want to start by asking you, for our listeners and viewers who might not be familiar with Schneider Electric or the service culture at Schneider Electric, can you give us a brief overview of your organization and more specifically your commitment and customer focus?
Yeah, no, thanks for the opportunity. So, Schneider Electric is maybe sometimes thought of as the 120 plus year old industrial company, but I'm proud to say we're really kind of reshaping who we are in terms of the way we engage with our customers and the solutions we're bringing to bear as well. But that also means we have to kind of begin to reshape who we are in terms of the way we're engaging with customers, right? Customers' expectations are changing. And it's not really about just selling products. So it's also really keenly understood within the organization this need to really drive a customer centricity culture. It's kind of what we kind of have been talking a lot about now for a couple of years within the organization. And it's about really understanding those expectations of the customers and how we can kind of reshape how we're engaging and touching them to deliver those solutions that they maybe weren't even thinking that they needed as we go forward. So.
And I want to commend you for getting the branding just right. I mean, you've got the company name in the background. I have none of that, so I'm a little jealous of how you've prepared today. And I'm making some notes for my future interviews. So thank you for giving me a tip without even saying
Just
it.
trying to improve your experience. See?
That's right. That's right.
You didn't even know you needed that. So
you never know what you need until you know you need. If that
that's
makes
great.
any sense. It
It's
probably
great.
So we're going to talk about rituals today, because I think rituals are, we all have them, whether we're aware of them or not. And I think you have some interesting ones. Before we start on that, I want to share with you a definition that I recently came across. And I just want to check in with you to see if this makes sense as a definition. I'm reading a book called Rituals for Work. And
Okay.
it's written by multiple authors. I'll post a link with this interview. But it provided a nice definition on what is a ritual. So the definition that the authors of Rituals for Work propose is actions that a person or group does repeatedly following a similar pattern or script in which they've imbued symbolism and meaning. Does that match somewhat how you look at rituals, or would you have something different?
No, I think that's a good fit, right? It's that repetitiveness to it. I think that's the important part of it, right? This consistency of the experience, right? And you may recall from where we met at that event there in Nashville, we were talking about how we were starting to kind of use this process of rituals to kind of reshape who we were as an organization, even internally, right? Sometimes we joke we're a lot of engineers that work at Schneider Electric, and we oftentimes think all of our solutions come from a spreadsheet, and that's not actually the truth, right? So having this external view, this customer inside view, was something we realized was really important. But how do we begin to reshape who we are to put these processes in place? And for us, we do. We're a large organization. We do a lot of conference calls and business reviews virtually, and what have you. And those meetings in the past always tended to start with right away with your financials, right? Here's where the numbers. Here's what the plan for the month. Here's where we are in orders or ships. And we started to try to do was put in place again those rituals focused around customer centricity that said, let's start our discussions. Let's start all of our meetings. Let's just get in the habit of reinforcing a customer story, an experience from a customer, a visit you had, something from our, we partnered with Medallia and to get touchpoint surveys. So let's just share something, a feedback, a verbatim, a comment, from there. And so, that was kind of the start of some of our rituals in terms of kind of bringing it home. And you try to get an organization to reshape the way they do all their meetings. It's a challenge, right? But I think we've been making some good progress there.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're starting a meeting talking about customer service or talking about customers or the customer
Yeah.
experience. And I have to tell you, in my research, this is this seems like a best practice, or at least a common practice. How did you get support from senior leaders to kind of change the habit of let's just talk about the numbers to let's start with this new ritual, which is talking about service and customer experience?
Yeah, we've talked to a lot of companies about how they made that transition as well, and we were doing some benchmarking. But for us, and a little bit of our story, it was a little bit mandated by my North America CEO, Annette Clayton. We'd given the update. I was relatively new in the job, and kind of the traditional scorecard. And at the end, it was kind of this question and pause, and it was, Kyle, now that you're new in this job, what are you going to bring to us? How are you going to help us drive this customer centricity culture? And I, sort of felt like, well, I just presented the scorecard. Wasn't that it? It sent me back to the drawing board, which was a great opportunity early. And like I said, just some months into this new role, leading this team now for several years. And so, that was the impetus to go out and spend time with benchmarking other organizations. We're also Salesforce customers, so we spent some time with Salesforce, which has a culture that we really resonated with, where we want to be in terms of employee engagement and customer experience really fitting hand to hand and really being a virtuous cycle. We believe that. I believe that. And so we had a lot of programs around employee engagement. So how could we tie that back to and think about it in terms of customer engagement? And is there a correlation? Could we show that within a given business or segment, employee engagement was at a certain level and the customer engagement was at a similar level? And we're still working on some of those connections, but we kind of put together a little heat map. Again, we're a bunch of engineers, so we like to have some data in front of us and some charts, but we put together a red, yellow, green heat map that looks at a handful of different areas we can kind of compare and look at employee engagement, look at the use of customer experience stories and storytelling within the organization. How well is that being adopted as a soft skill, right, as an indicator? And then thinking about how well are we doing coaching, training, leading, connecting our employees to customer personas. We go to market through a lot of different avenues. And so, that value proposition for the end user is different than the contractor or the partner we may be going to business with. So we have to kind of bring that to life for our employees who aren't in front of customers all the time.
So there's a lot of things I think that you just shared there. One is a key point. It is this really came, at least a specific ritual of starting the meeting talking about customers, that came with clear direction and advocacy from your North American CEO. And one of the questions I get all the time is, if my boss is not on board, how do I start creating a customer focused culture? And I don't have a good answer yet. And you seem to be fortunate that you've got that senior leadership. But the other thing, though, I think is really important, and I want to talk more about this. Employees tend to understand something is important by how often we talk about it. So if you talk about customers and customer centricity at every single meeting, they probably understand that this is really important. Just like if you only talk about financial metrics, they probably understand that's important. Where else do you have rituals that kind of reinforce the importance of focusing on customers?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you talked a little bit about that. If you don't have the top-down support, which thankfully we do have here in Schneider, but if you don't have, I do think you can start kind of these grassroots efforts and start to kind of build a program and do it by your example you live every day, right? Put customers first, start your dialogue with customers first. It can't just be a slogan on a PowerPoint slide. It's got to be something you live out and act on. And I'm proud to say I spent a lot of my career in Schneider in our supply chain organization, in our manufacturing organization, and that's an organization within Schneider that takes safety really first, right? Really puts it first in terms of our customers having a safe product that they're getting from us, and us really abiding to really strong industry level, the top of the level activities within our own manufacturing plants. And so and they start every day, every meeting, shift transition meetings, everything talking about safety. And so this was kind of the format we used in essence to kind of replicate in the front offices where, we're not maybe starting every meeting. Like I said, it tended to start far more often with the financials and how we were against our business plan. Those are important, right? We owe that to the organization. We have a fiduciary duty in order to deliver that as well. But we also know that to differentiate your products, differentiate your business in the future. And you know the statistics, you know all the different studies and reports that are out there, probably more than I do, Jeff. But there's a lot of them out there that really support that now is the time where that experience the customer has is how you differentiate your products and achieve your price and things within your industry, and it's how you're going to compete. And so, we really kind of put that front and center in terms of thinking about this reshaping our organization in terms of, and you're only going to do that by repeating the process and thankfully I'm a senior leader in the organization, but I can tell you this kicking off with customer stories is something that's happening now all through all different levels of the organization.
I think something that you said is important, and this ties back to where rituals can gain their power. Rituals, again, being a habit, sharing data it could be a ritual, could be a habit. We could share data about customer service. I know, some organizations, they'll say, here's our net promoter score.
Yeah.
But you're talking about sharing stories as part of your ritual. And to go back to your safety comment, I've heard organizations, when they've shifted from giving safety data points to let's start with a safety story, it grabs people's attention more.
Yeah.
What's been your experience with moving to stories as part of your rituals?
Yeah, I think it's super important. And if I think about our evolution, one is we began and we implemented, we had some third-party providers we've worked with to kind of bring real-time stories to bear, right? So that enabled us as well, right? Because right on my phone, I can go to an app right now and pull up a story. And so we put that in place. We called it the customer voice is our internal name for that activity. And then we start kind of, learning how to use that tool and understand what customers are saying to us and more, near real time. And our own evolution too, we probably started with really telling customer stories that were green, that were good, that were positive, the smiley faces in the app, right? And I guess I'm pleased to say that I think we're now at that point where we're really starting to get the value from it. It's good to read that we're getting some things right sometimes, right? And that we're delivering for our customers. And it's some days when the day's a little long, it's good to read a few of those and know we're right on the right track. But the real value, the lessons, the learning points, the opportunities for the organization to pivot and change are in reading those, the unhappy story, right? The verbatim where the customer took time to send us feedback, to write something down, not just a 0 to 10, click the button, but to give us some real input. And so, now I'm pleased to say that we're probably migrating more towards sharing and discussing and kicking off meetings with, hey, listen, we disappointed a customer, right? We missed an opportunity here. What can we do as an organization to start to get better in these areas, right?
And so that becomes not just a story, but starting a meeting or a discussion with a ritual of a brief after action review.
Yeah.
Here's what the situation was, what happened, how do we prevent it?
Yeah. It starts to reshape how your days go, right? And what you're spending your time on. And it creates dialogue around the coffee pot or the water cooler or whatever about, hey, I saw this story in the tool, right? Did you read this one? Have you heard about this, whatever? And I think that's a much more self-fulfilling prophecy around how we're going to get better, right? Than just simply saying, patting ourselves on the back or talking about a phone survey we did a year ago, right? Type of thing. Candidly, the dialogues just had a short life, right? That event would go off. We'd do a phone survey a year ago. We'd look at some studies, some results. We might put in place some action plan within some of the business segments, and then it's dead again until you kicked off that next event. And by having real-time activities and really, I think it's the way you can really start to reshape your culture, right, about who you are.
So we've talked a lot about how communally there's rituals around meetings, et cetera. Do you have any rituals personally, whether it's a daily habit, a weekly habit, something that you do to kind of reinforce your own customer-focused mindset?
Well, I'm a very habitual person, right? I've got all kinds of things that I like to do, and yeah, it's an interesting question. I like to start my morning and looking at my app and kind of see what's going on in terms of what's the feedback coming in, and I do it from a couple different hats, right? One of my responsibilities is our customer care organization, so we're providing tech support and availability support, information support to all of our customers across North America, Canada, US, and Mexico. And so I'll take the first snapshot and look at, my team in particular, and hope that things are looking pretty good there. And then I take the broader view of the whole North America organization and take a look. But I'm pleased to say that I've got a few other rituals in place as well, right? Every Friday morning, I try to reflect on the week and send a thank you out, right? Some recognition to someone that I engage with during the week that did a spectacular job. I put a ritual in place to try to improve my social presence, right, on LinkedIn, and representing both my own brand and the Schneider Electric brand. So every week, trying to make sure that periodically I'm going in and sharing articles that are important to our organization, things that we fundamentally believe in as well. So yeah, I've got a handful of those things, primarily in the mornings, that I like to bang out every day. So.
Well, I think it's fantastic to start your day with a ritual that gets you customer focused versus a ritual that means email or check your calendar. I think that's a good habit.
Yeah.
So we're running a little bit short on time, and I wonder if you have any advice for people who are watching or listening to this on how they can create their own rituals, whether it's for themselves personally or for the teams that they work with.
Yeah, maybe there's one other thing that I would, first off, tune into these types of videos and learn as much as you can, these types of dialogues. Don't hesitate to reach out to those that are experts like Jeff. That's certainly a tip I would give. Don't be afraid to set a high standard for your organization. Don't be afraid to start trying something different and making it work within your own environment with a vision of what you're trying to accomplish. And then for us, we kicked off a program, what we called the Customer Experience Ambassadors. So we're a small organization in a big 3-country zone, right? And we know that it's hard for us to touch everyone in the way we want. And of course, we do videos and things like this all the time. But we created customer ambassadors where we selected people and actually got volunteers across the organization. So we trained up another 60 people to be out there kind of as disciples of our message to help take that. And sometimes there's a I don't know how to do this, or I'm not sure I know how to kick off my meeting. I don't have a customer story because I work in the finance or HR or whatever. And we don't believe that's true. We think there's stories that touch everybody. And so our ambassadors, help bring that to life as experts and kind of just that, ambassadors within each of those different organizations across North America to kind of help be the expert. So if they can't get me, they can't get one of my team members, they've got somebody that's bringing this message to life. And it's basically a way of just extending your network out across your organization, right? So I didn't get to go add 50 people to my team, but I got 50 people out there selling the right message. So I think it was a brilliant idea by my team. I have no credit. I didn't come up with this idea at all, but it's a great idea, I think. And I've been really advocating for it in all the different sessions I have. I think it's a great program. So.
And that's a fantastic example. One I've heard a few places before. It really seems to be a best practice of amplifying your reach. And speaking of amplifying, you mentioned earlier that you're trying to be more intentional about being active on social media. And there's a variety of ways that if people want to connect with you or learn more about you, they might be able to find you. What's the best way for people tuning in to find you?
Yeah, probably, for messages, and I share a lot of these types of thoughts. And of course, on Schneider Electric, LinkedIn is probably the best place to connect. And if you've got a question, don't hesitate to send me a message. I'd be happy to engage. So, thanks for the time, Jeff. I really appreciate it.
This has been a lot of fun, Kyle. I appreciate you sharing your insights. It's been very valuable. It's been a great conversation, and I really appreciate it as well. Thank you.